In 1887, in the west of Ireland, an official surveyor stumbled upon what he first thought was a collapsed rabbit warren. Smoke drifted from a crooked pipe stuck in the hillside, and from the turf mouth of the earth a child crawled out, pale and blinking as though born of clay. Behind him came another, then another, each smaller, each clutching scraps of cloth. At last a woman emerged, shawl drawn tight, her face marked by years, though her body stooped as if pressed down by soil itself. This was no den of animals. It was a home. The O'Malley family lived underground. The paradox begins in that moment. Respectable records listing parishioners, marriages, baptisms above ground, and yet here was a family dwelling below it, unseen by law, unacknowledged by census until accident revealed them. Respectability above, subterranean life below. The first images of them survive in faded photographs taken by officials. Black and white frames show 6 figures at the lip of their earthen dwelling. Their skin looks waxen, their eyes too wide for daylight. A caption beneath reads, "Inhabitants of a subterranean dwelling, Mayo, 1887. Their faces, unfamiliar to registers, were nevertheless recorded. Still recorded. The sensory record deepens." The visitor described a bitter smoke of turf and damp straw curling from an improvised chimney, a floor of clay pressed hard by bare feet, an air heavy, unmoving. One physical detail, one archival fact. The file insists on both. Before we descend further, pause. Where are you listening from? What hour is written on your clock? These files move strangely. They cross borders and time zones, surfacing at dawn in one country and at midnight in another. It steadies the file to know who else is awake with it. Write your country, your hour. Become part of the witness. This will not hurry. These pages open slowly, resisting closure. Absence will matter as much as testimony. We will weigh what is not said as carefully as what is written. And if you have not subscribed, take this as invitation. The cases are long, the silences deliberate. Company matters when a file resists closing. Medical notes entered the record reluctantly. A physician wrote, "Limbs shortened, jaws advanced, torsos narrowed." Another noted, "Marked similarity among kin, as if mirror bred mirror." Their words belonged to an era before genetics had language. They did not explain, they described. What they described was unease made flesh. Neighbors added their fragments. A schoolteacher wrote in his diary, "They are not as we are. They keep to shadows, and the children squint at light." Another villager, "I met one boy on the road. His gait was odd, as if shaped by earth itself." Private entries, never meant for publication, yet they survived. Registers list the O'Malleys, names baptized, children christened, marriages noted. But beside those names, parish ledgers show gaps. No burials where death should be. People who entered the earth did not leave in official ink. The refrain enters, not kept, but still recorded. Their home not kept on maps, yet photographed. Their faces not kept in polite society, yet preserved in reports. Their deaths are not kept in registers, yet whispered in diaries. The contradiction stands. The photograph taken at the entrance to their dugout is not singular. Another exists, captured weeks later, showing the same family but arranged differently. The father stands this time, his head almost brushing the turf edge, his body bowed from crouching years underground. The caption beneath reads, "O'Malley household inspected under poor law survey." 2 images, 2 official contexts, the same impossibility. A home beneath earth, a life unacknowledged until recorded by accident. What began as survey became investigation. Inspectors filed reports to the Board of Guardians. One wrote, "The dwelling is wholly subterranean. Ventilation insufficient. Inhabitants display features uncommon. Jaws pronounced, eyes enlarged, limbs shortened. The phrases slip between architectural report and human diagnosis. They could not describe the house without describing the family, nor the family without echoing unease. The documents blur boundaries, leaving record where explanation failed. In the margins of one report, a clerk penciled, "Photographs enclosed." The photographs survived, the margin note survived. The clerk's name did not, still recorded. Newspapers touched the case briefly. A Dublin paper printed a line. An extraordinary family discovered living beneath the earth in Mayo. No names, no details. Yet even stripped of identity, the O'Malleys became story. That clipping, folded into a scrapbook, outlived its editors. A single sentence held what the file refused to explain. Neighbors spoke differently. Diaries capture whispers. "I saw children at dusk who turned their faces from light, as though it stung." Another, "They speak in whispers, even to one another, as if the air above ground bruised their throats." The exaggeration may be folklore, but the records align. Faces pale, eyes wide, voices quiet. Even rumor confirms residue. Medical men returned again. One wrote of consanguinity, a word meant to suggest blood too closely bound. Another hinted at atavism, an older descent showing through. Their language falters, searching for vocabulary that science had not yet solidified. They circled a concept we would later call genetic isolation. But in 1887, it was mystery. Registers themselves betray anomaly. Names appear in baptismal rolls, but no burials follow. Children born, children married, yet no deaths entered. In a county where famine had left scars only a generation earlier, absence of burials was itself loud. Families entered the earth, but did not exit in ink. The refrain mutates. At first, not kept, but still recorded. Now, recorded in fragments, never reconciled. Their names in registers, their faces in photographs, their bodies in reports, their absence in burials. Each fragment refuses harmony. And so the file opens on paradox. A family living underground, photographed but unclassified, named but not buried, described but not explained. Their home is absent from maps, yet present in images. Their features are noted but not defined. Their existence resisted closure, even as officials tried to seal it in lines of ink. This is where the hook ends and the descent begins. A family lived beneath the earth in Ireland, 1887. Their neighbors whispered. Their officials recorded reluctantly. Their doctors groped for words. What remains is not a miracle, not legend, but residue. Still recorded. Do not close the file. The year 1887 placed the O'Malleys inside a country already fractured between past and present. Ireland still bore the famine scars, its western counties haunted by hunger, eviction, and emigration. Stone cottages roofed with thatch dotted the landscape, but behind the postcard image lay poverty so deep that families sought shelter wherever soil permitted. Some dug into hillsides to escape rent, rain, and landlords, but most abandoned such dwellings when they could. The O'Malleys did not. They remained below the earth, generation after generation, long after neighbors rose again above it. Law set the first context. By the late 19th century, the poor law system governed relief in Ireland. Inspectors patrolled, guardians recorded. Dwellings unfit for habitation were to be reported and tenants relocated. But inspectors were stretched thin, their routes long, their duties thankless. Errors multiplied, omissions persisted. A cottage left unnoted could vanish from the record. A family living beneath turf could remain invisible until an accident revealed them. The O'Malleys' existence was bureaucratic failure as much as biological anomaly. Geography reinforced invisibility. The family lived near Bogland in Mayo, where fields yielded poorly and distances stretched between towns. Roads dissolved into mud during rain, into ice during winter. To travel from their dugout to the nearest parish church took hours. Few outsiders made the trip. Even fewer returned. Census takers arrived rarely, and when they did, they copied what was given. Names without detail, ages without question. Geography ensured that anomalies survived longer here than in cities. The soil itself mattered. Bogland preserves and conceals. Turf cut for fuel left scars across hills, but also cavities into which shelters could be pressed. Lime spread across beams slowed decay. Clay floors pressed by feet became as hard as stone. A dwelling carved from bog could last far longer than outsiders imagined. The O'Malley's home was not crude but enduring, built from necessity, hardened by repetition. Architecture conspired with geography to preserve them. Local history added another layer. Folklore in Mayo carried stories of cave people, families who burrowed into hillsides during famine years, only to die within or leave forever. Yet the O'Malleys never left. Oral tradition whispered that their line had always favored shadow, that their ancestors too had dwelt in hollows. Whether true or invented later, the rumor wrapped permanence around anomaly. The economy sharpened the conditions. Tenants paid rent to landlords, but those who sank beneath earth often did so to escape collection. To live underground was to live outside the rent roll, invisible to taxation, shielded from eviction. But invisibility cut both ways, hidden from landlords, hidden also from relief. The O'Malleys existed in the blind spot of a system that punished presence and ignored absence. Press clippings from the time give glimpses of broader context. In 1887, a Dublin paper described a distressing case of pauperism in Mayo families discovered in hovels beneath the soil. It did not name the O'Malleys, but the description aligns. A London paper added weeks later, such dwellings recall the caves of savages, yet they exist within Her Majesty's dominion. Outrage in ink did not translate to relief in practice. Newspapers printed anomalies as spectacle. Nothing changed. Respectability, meanwhile, operated differently. Families who lived above ground judged those below it harshly. Diaries record disgust. The O'Malleys keep to holes. Their children pale, their manners odd. Respectability was measured in walls above earth, roofs visible to road. The O'Malleys failed that test, and so they were shunned. Yet paradoxically, shunning preserved their secrecy. Neighbors spoke in whispers, but did not petition officials. Silence insulated anomaly. Contradictions stack here. Law required dwellings be inspected, yet oversight failed. Geography concealed, architecture preserved. Economy punished visibility, rewarded invisibility. Respectability condemned them, yet silence protected them. Registers listed their names, but not their deaths. Photographs showed their faces, yet burials left no trace. Every layer of context made their anomaly possible. The refrain mutates again. In Beat 1 it was not kept, but still recorded. Here it becomes hidden, yet documented. Their house is hidden in bog, yet photographed. Their faces hidden from society, yet printed in reports. Their absence hidden from registers, yet whispered in diaries. Hidden, yet documented. So the first half of the context closes. Famine's shadow, law's blindness, geography's concealment, economy's perverse incentives, respectability's silence. The O'Malley's underground life was not an accident, but a consequence. Ireland in 1887 created the conditions. The file merely preserved them. By 1887, the O'Malley's Valley was a place where modernity arrived only in fragments. Telegraph wires cut across main roads, but not into bogland. Trains carried emigrants to ports, but not from hamlets like theirs. The district lived half in the 19th century, half in centuries older. In that liminal space, an underground home could persist without intervention. The Civil War in America had already drained men from the west of Ireland through emigration, and the famine of the 1840s had thinned the population still more. Empty cottages dotted the hillsides. Roofs collapsed, doors gone. Inspectors counted ruins as part of their surveys. Yet the O'Malleys were not ruins. They were alive, concealed within a hill. To an outsider, the absence of a cottage looked like abandonment. To those who knew, it was habitation. This was how invisibility worked, not by hiding presence, but by disguising it as absence. Law layered over this invisibility with contradictions. Poor law inspectors were tasked with identifying unfit dwellings, yet their reports were written for distant boards in Dublin or London. The language of those reports often blurred. Several hovels discovered, some families living in substandard conditions. Without names, without locations, reports became abstractions. Bureaucratic vagueness shielded specifics. Families like the O'Malleys slipped between categories, not properly housed, but not properly absent. To correct the oversight required persistence few possessed. Geography compounded it. Bogland swallowed sound. Hills blocked sight. Roads often ended abruptly where stone walls began. To reach the O'Malleys required knowing the precise turf track to follow. A stranger could walk yards from their chimney pipe and never see smoke if the wind carried it away. Geography itself colluded with silence. Architecture deserves another glance. Subterranean dwellings were not unique to them, but most were temporary emergency shelters during famine years, abandoned once crops or relief allowed families to return above ground. Theirs, however, was reinforced. Inspectors noted beams thicker than required, lime heavy on walls, turf compacted above into a roof that shed water. This was not temporary. This was permanence disguised as makeshift. Architecture declared intent to stay below. Economy incentivized such permanence. To live in a listed cottage meant paying rent to a landlord. To burrow beneath bog was to vanish from rent rolls. Eviction notices could not be served on a hole in earth. Families that disappeared beneath soil avoided the collector, but by avoiding rent, they also avoided relief. Official aid was often tied to records. No record, no aid. The O'Malleys lived in that paradox, sheltered from landlord, excluded from assistance. Press fragments hint at how anomaly became a spectacle. A Dublin paper in 1887 called such dwellings a disgrace to civilization. A London weekly described them as the caves of savages, unworthy of Europe. Outrage filled the paragraphs, but it was outrage meant for readers, not for reform. No relief followed. Ink turned misery into novelty, an Irish curiosity for distant eyes. Neighbors' voices are sharper. One diary in 1888. They keep to shadows. The children squint in daylight. They seem dark. Another. They speak little, and when they do, their words are slow, as if the tongue itself grew unused. Neighbors condemned them socially, even as they protected them bureaucratically. To gossip was safe. To petition was not. Respectability functioned as shield and sword. Religion added its weight. Parish records show baptisms, marriages, but always with gaps. Deaths unrecorded, burials missing. Priests wrote what was convenient, what fit ritual. To acknowledge irregularities would invite scrutiny. Sacraments were administered, but anomalies were ignored. The parish benefited from compliance. Silence was sanctified. By the close of the century, the O'Malley story had become part of valley folklore. Children dared each other to creep near the turf mound. Some claimed to hear whispers beneath ground. Others told of strange faces glimpsed at dusk. Myth grew where law failed. Folklore made them both monstrous and untouchable. The refrain seals the context, hidden yet documented. Their house is hidden in bog, yet sketched in inspection reports. Their names hidden from burial registers, yet whispered in diaries. Their existence is hidden from landlords, yet captured in photographs. Hidden, yet documented. And so Beat 2 concludes. Poverty, geography, architecture, economy, religion respectability, all conspired to permit their anomaly. Ireland in 1887 did not merely allow the O'Malleys to live underground. It required it. The file holds fragments, but the conditions explain them. Even the diaspora papers in America joined in. The Irish World in New York, 1907. Troglodytes of Mayo, Her Majesty gone, but their cave endures. Emigrants read and wrote letters home, demanding truth. Their questions multiplied the contradictions. Folklore added its own testimony. Children whispered that the O'Malleys never died, only multiplied. Others said the bog preserved them as it preserved ancient bodies. Rumor gave them eternity when law could not. The refrain shifted again. Before, denied, yet preserved. Now, repeated until absurd. Letters repeated, diaries repeated, ledgers repeated, reports repeated, photographs repeated. Each denial, each evasion, each identical measurement turned anomaly into monotony. Repetition itself became accusation. Contradictions reached a climax. Registers that should have tracked life and death instead recorded only beginnings. Diaries that should have noted change instead noted sameness. Commerce that should have measured growth instead measured stasis. Medicine that should have classified instead described confusion. Press that should have revealed instead entertained. Every system mirrored the impossibility rather than resolving it. By 1910, the O'Malleys were both invisible and infamous. In their valley, they were endured. In newspapers, they were curiosity. In records, they were contradiction. No official ever reconciled the fragments. The file grew, page upon page, until its weight became its meaning. The refrain closes the rising pattern, repeated until absurd. The O'Malleys' lives underground were never explained. They were multiplied in fragments, preserved by contradiction, documented by denial. What began as anomaly had become pattern. Do not close the file. The irregularities gathered across decades do not simply describe anomaly. They reveal a structure. What appears to be miracle or curse was, in fact, machinery. The O'Malleys' persistence beneath the earth, their repetition in ledgers, their absence from burials, their constancy in trade and report, none of it happened by chance. It was maintained by overlapping levers: kinship, bureaucracy, geography, architecture. The irregularities did not vanish after the first discovery in 1887. They multiplied, scattered across decades, surfacing in letters, diaries, ledgers, reports, and clippings. Each fragment seemed small, but together they wove a pattern too dense to ignore. Letters came first. In 1888, a cousin in Galway wrote to the parish priest, "Is it true our kin are burrowed like rabbits, living beneath the bog? Why is their home not listed among the cottages?" The priest replied with a phrase that explained nothing. "They are provided for." The cousin kept the letter. His doubt remained unanswered, yet still recorded. 2 years later, a brother who had emigrated to Boston sent remittances back to Mayo. Rumor reached him that the money was not repairing a house, but sustaining a hole in the ground. His letter to the poor law guardians was blunt. "Do you allow people to live like this? Is my support wasted?" The guardians' reply: "Household inspected, found in order." The contradiction between his incredulity and their evasion entered the file. By the mid-1890s, letters from America multiplied. Irish emigrants demanded to know how kin could be baptized in registers, yet never buried, how children could be christened, yet never seen at school. Replies from clerks repeated the formula. All entries certified. The refrain hardened, denied in words, preserved in ink. Neighbors recorded more visceral testimony. A farmer's wife in 1891. "I saw their boy at market. He squinted as though sun cut him, his skin pale, his gait bent. People stepped aside without speaking." Another in 1893. "They come rarely, always at dusk. Their faces too alike, as if one mold had shaped them all. These words never left her diary, yet they survived, folded into trunks and passed down. Whisper became record. Tradesmen added their accidental testimony. A tailor's ledger shows the O'Malley name across decades, each time with the same notation. Sizes unchanged, same as before. In 1889, 1,894, 1898 and changed. A shoemaker's book lists identical boot sizes for 3 sons across 15 years. A grocer's invoice from 1896 notes, O'Malley same order again. Commerce did not question. Routine was profit. Yet their ledgers betray the anomaly. A family unchanging, repeated until absurd. Doctors left sharper words. One physician in 1892 wrote, marked prognathism of jaw, limbs shortened, torsos compressed. All siblings bear resemblance beyond common kinship. Another in 1895 hinted at atavism, a return of primitive traits. A third, uneasy, suggested consanguinity. Each doctor groped for vocabulary. Genetics was not yet formal science, but their unease is plain. They could describe, but not explain. Their reports joined the growing chorus. Officials contradicted themselves openly. In 1892, a poor law report declared the family rehoused. Yet photographs from 1893 show them still standing at the dugout. Captions read, O'Malley's in situ, but contradiction between prose and image could not be reconciled. Still recorded. Even newspapers could not resist. A Dublin weekly in 1895. In Mayo lives a family dwelling below ground, remarkable for their sameness of face. The Cork Examiner in 1897 sharpened the tone. Authorities deny, yet photographs prove a family persists beneath turf, unaltered across years. A London paper made spectacle of it. Cave people of Ireland, Her Majesty's subjects dwelling like troglodytes. Outrage and amusement mingled, but each clipping amplified the irregularities. By the close of the decade, American Irish papers carried the tale. One in New York, 1899. Strange kin of Mayo unchanged faces. Uncounted deaths. The diaspora demanded answers that local officials never gave. The refrain mutates through these fragments. At first, not kept, but still recorded. Then, hidden, yet documented. Now it becomes denied, yet preserved. Letters denied, diaries preserved. Reports denied, photographs preserved. Clerks denied, ledgers preserved. Each denial ensured another record survived. Contradictions sharpened. Registers list baptisms, but no burials. Doctors describe deformities, but offer no cause. Clerks insist on rehousing while photographs show otherwise. Tradesmen record sameness when growth should have been expected. Neighbors whisper fear while newspapers print spectacle. Each record stands against the others, yet none cancels out. Together, they form a rising pattern that overwhelms. By 1900, the O'Malleys were no longer anomaly whispered in one valley. They were a legend circulating in print, a problem in official files, a curiosity in emigrant letters. Their lives underground were both denied and documented, concealed and exposed, forgotten and remembered. The refrain closes this half, denied yet preserved. By the turn of the century, the irregularities no longer appeared as scattered curiosities. They had become a network, strands of contradiction crossing one another, a web that refused to be cut clean. Relatives abroad remained persistent. In 1901, a letter from Boston asked the county, why do the registers insist on baptisms, yet the burials remain blank? Has no O'Malley ever died? The reply returned as before, records confirmed. The uniformity of the reply became evidence itself. Each question, whatever its shape, met the same flat answer. Uniform denial testified more loudly than correction could. Another letter from Liverpool in 1902 struck a sharper tone. If they be not dead, then show their graves. If they be alive, And why are they not schooled or enlisted? The guardians never replied. Silence became the loudest entry in the file. Neighbors, too, grew bolder in their diaries. One in 1901 saw the youngest boy, though he is not young. His face the same as the elder, as though age does not divide them. Another in 1903, they pass by our windows unchanged. My children grow, theirs do not. This is no blessing. It is wrongness. Whisper sharpened into accusation, though only on private paper. Tradesmen's books continued their refrain. The tailor, weary, scribbled in 1904, O'Malley order same as last. Why do I write it again? A shoemaker in 1906 noted, boots as before, 10 years now. Even grocers, practical men, remarked, always the same weight of flour, never more, never less. Constancy became not only habit but burden, the monotony accused. Doctors revisited the family and grew harsher. A physician in 1902, the jaws protrude, the torsos seem compressed. This is hereditary, yet intensified. Isolation has preserved defect as if embalmed. Another in 1905 wrote, faces too alike, bodies too narrow. I cannot call it disease, yet it is not health. Medicine circled what later science would call genetic bottleneck, but without the vocabulary. Their unease entered reports, each more vivid than the last. Officials tried again to erase anomaly. In 1904, report claimed family resettled in adequate dwelling, but photographs from 1905 contradict, showing the O'Malleys once more before the dugout, children grown, yet faces the same. The caption beneath reads, inhabitants unchanged, words denied, images preserved. The pattern thickened. The press expanded coverage. A Dublin weekly in 1906, the subterranean family of Mayo remains, their likeness uncanny, their home unfit. A London illustrated paper printed sketches based on photographs. Pale figures emerging from turf, faces nearly identical. Outrage mixed with fascination. The O'Malleys became spectacle for distant readers, shame for neighbors, silence for officials. If the first half of the mechanism revealed the levers that sustained the O'Malleys, the second half shows how contradictions were absorbed, how suspicion was neutralized, and how repetition hardened into permanence. The system did not simply permit their life underground. It defended it, reshaping every challenge into silence. Letters from relatives abroad were the first pressure. Each one questioned how baptisms could appear without burials, how children could be christened yet never schooled, how faces could remain unchanged in photographs. Each letter was met with the same reply. Entry confirmed. All certified. Matter closed. The uniformity of reply was itself a signal. Bureaucracy did not argue. It repeated. Repetition was denial disguised as order. Families kept the replies, and so the contradictions survived. Denied, yet preserved. Officials deflected by ritual. Poor law inspectors filed reports in formulaic language, designed less to inform than to satisfy distant boards. The O'Malleys' dwelling was described as inspected, found in order, across multiple decades. Yet appended notes reveal cracks, traces of excessive lime, premises unusual. These marginalia were never entered into final summaries. The contradiction between main text and margin shows how bureaucracy absorbed anomaly. Public reassurance above, private doubt beneath. Clergy reinforced silence with sanctity. Priests baptized children, married couples, but omitted burials. When asked, they framed omission as mystery. Sermons praised constancy. Some are chosen to endure unchanged, sign of grace. Parishioners glanced toward the O'Malleys. To question them was to question providence. Religion transmuted irregularity into miracle. Silence was sanctified. Commerce perpetuated sameness. Tailors, shoemakers, grocers all repeated orders. As before, same size, no alteration. At first convenience, later habit. Merchants profited from routine, and routine became record. Constancy was no longer anomaly, but customer profile. Commerce made impossibility ordinary. Medicine, meant to classify, only deepened unease. Doctors invoked terms: atavism, degeneracy, consanguinity, yet none explained. Each report reinforced perception of abnormality while withholding resolution. By documenting without solving, medicine perpetuated mystery. Science in its infancy served as scribe of anomaly, not interpreter. Neighbors provided the folklore layer. Diaries mentioned children squinting at sun, adults whispering in shadows, faces too alike to distinguish. Some wrote with pity, others with fear. But none petitioned officials. Gossip became a safety valve. By keeping suspicion private, they avoided conflict. Folklore allowed coexistence with contradiction. The press amplified, but at distance. Dublin and London papers wrote of troglodytes of Mayo. American Irish papers wrote of kin who never die. Outrage was printed, but no relief followed. Spectacle replaced reform. Ink consumed anomaly, turning poverty into entertainment. The O'Malleys became story more than family. Finance hardened all of this into policy. To rehouse them cost pounds. To ignore them cost ink. Guardians chose ink. Each year budgets balanced by neglect. Relief flowed to visible families, not subterranean ones. Arithmetic disguised as compassion preserved anomaly. The refrain mutates here again. Earlier, maintained by design. Now it becomes preserved by interest. Every actor gained. Clerks gained authority through repetition. Priests gained parables of grace. Merchants gained steady custom. Doctors gained case notes. Editors gained readers. Guardians saved money. Even neighbors gained a story to whisper. Interest aligned into permanence. Folklore became final shield. Children whispered that the O'Malleys never aged, that the bog preserved them as it preserved ancient bodies. By naming anomaly as myth, the community disarmed its threat. To say they are legend was safer than to say they are error. Folklore absorbed contradiction, protecting both the family and the system. Thus the mechanism stands complete. Kinship insulated. Bureaucracy ritualized. Geography concealed. Architecture preserved. Commerce normalized. Medicine documented. Religion sanctified. Finance economized. Folklore mythologized. Every layer reinforced the others. The O'Malleys remained underground, not by accident, but by architecture of society itself. The refrain closes this beat. Not miracle, but mechanism. Not oversight, but design. Not curse, but incentive. Still recorded, still preserved, still unexplained. Exposure came not through confession, but through accident. In 1911, the census returned with unusual rigor. Enumerators, ordered to account for every dwelling, recorded subterranean house beside the O'Malley name. The phrase stood out in sheets filled with cottages, farmhouses, and ruins. For the first time, anomaly appeared not as rumor or letter, but in national enumeration. The family who had been hidden by kinship and formula were suddenly visible in ink that reached Dublin. Neighbors noticed change. Diaries from that spring note. Strangers walking the bog track, writing in books. Another. Officials asked questions, but we told them little. Better to say nothing. Silence remained protective, yet cracks had formed. Once written in census sheets, invisibility fractured. Relatives abroad seized on the revelation. In Boston, an emigrant society clipped the census reports and reprinted them. Their newsletter, 1912. Our kin in Mayo still dwell beneath turf, unrehoused after generations. Letters surged again toward the poor law guardians. How is this permitted in a modern country? Replies came back as before. Matter concluded, but now contradictions were visible to diaspora readers, not confined to local whispers. Inspectors returned, spurred by press attention. One report in 1913 described the dwelling: cellar-like, poorly ventilated, inhabitants pale, features irregular. Yet the same report concluded: premises not unfit, household declines relocation. Contradiction hardened into policy. Officials admitted irregularity but allowed it, claiming choice. Consent became pretext for neglect. The press sharpened tone. The Irish Independent ran a column: Mayo family dwells like troglodytes. The Times of London followed: subjects of the crown persist in cavern habitation. Spectacle grew, reform lagged. Ink spread faster than action. Neighbors, emboldened by attention, wrote more openly in diaries. One in 1914. They remain as always, unchanging. Children of mine now old, theirs look the same as before. Another. The census men came and left, yet the O'Malleys stayed below. Perhaps they never will leave. What had been whispered unease became resigned record. Then war came. In 1914, the Great War drew attention elsewhere. Inspectors vanished into regiments. Newspapers shifted to headlines of battle. The O'Malleys slipped back into shadow. Reports from 1916 make no mention of them. Rebellion in Dublin erased anomalies in Mayo. Exposure receded. Yet photographs remained. A 1915 image shows the family still before their dugout, unchanged from 1887. Caption: O'Malley household, Mayo. Officials claimed rehousing. Photographs refuted. Contradiction survived war. The refrain shifts again. Earlier, preserved by interest. Now, revealed, not confessed. The O'Malleys never explained, never admitted. Exposure came through census, through press, through photographs. Collapse came not from their words, but from accidents of ink and image. The first half of collapse closes here. The file swelled with contradictions. Census recording subterranean house. Diaspora letters demanding answers. Inspectors filing doublespeak. Newspapers spreading spectacle. Photographs disproving official claims. Exposure had begun, but explanation never came. Do not close the file. Exposure never settles cleanly. Once anomaly surfaces, it either becomes absorbed into system or shatters it. For the O'Malleys, the exposure of 1911 to 1922 did not end their story. It destabilized it. The collapse that followed was not tidy disappearance, but dissonance that stretched across decades. Officials first attempted erasure through paperwork. In 1917, an inspection report declared premises vacant. The phrase implied resolution. The O'Malleys had either moved or perished. But a parish diary from that same year, written in the margin of a baptismal register, contradicts. Saw the O'Malleys at market, thin, pale, yet living still. The official page and the private margin tell opposing truths. Both survive. Relatives abroad pressed again. In 1918, with war still raging in Europe, a New York emigrant wrote, "Why is it in Mayo our kin live as troglodytes? This is disgrace to country and kin." Dublin Castle replied with the same formula used for decades. Matter investigated. No anomaly found. The letter shows denial calcified into inheritance. Bureaucracy became chorus, repeating denials so uniform they became self-indicting. Neighbors could not be convinced by denials. A Farmer's Diary, 1919. Officials say gone, yet smoke rises each dawn. Another, 1920. Children of mine, now men. Yet O'Malley children remain small, unchanged. Local eyes saw what national files refused. Persistence without alteration. The press briefly revived attention. A Cork paper, 1921. Reports of subterranean family persist. The piece offered no details, just rumor turned headline. In London, a sketch appeared in a satirical weekly, showing pale figures crawling from bog. Laughter at distance replaced outrage. The O'Malleys shifted from anomaly to caricature. Exposure became entertainment. yet photographs resisted ridicule. In 1922, a London journal printed an image captioned, "Mayo family inhabits subterranean dwelling. The faces are the same as those from 1887. Pale, jaws prominent, eyes wide." Officials wrote, "Premises vacant, yet photographs contradicted. Word and image split apart, each refusing to erase the other." Land reform in the 1920s created new cottages across Mayo, moving tenants into stone homes. Yet the O'Malley's names do not appear on rehousing lists. They slipped through redistribution as they had slipped through inspection. Reform bypassed anomaly. Bureaucracy again chose silence. Folklore filled the gap. Children whispered that the O'Malleys never died, but the bog preserved them as it preserved ancient corpses cut from peat, hair intact, flesh leathery. Adults repeated the story with nervous laughter. In absence of explanation, myth provided equilibrium. Diaspora newspapers kept printing fragments. In 1925, the Irish World in New York reported, "Kin in Mayo dwell beneath earth still, though authorities deny." Readers shook heads, wrote letters, sent money. The cycle repeated: inquiry, denial, persistence. By 1930, national records erased them. Inspectors wrote nothing. Reports made no mention. Silence replaced denial, but diaries persisted. One entry that year, "Past their hill, saw smoke still." They are not gone. Contradiction endured. Presence in life, absence in file. The refrain shifts one last time within this beat. Earlier, revealed, not confessed. Now, erased, yet persisting. Official pages erased them. Diaries, photographs, rumors persisted. Collapse was not their vanishing. Collapse was the record's failure to contain them. By mid-century, the O'Malleys had dissolved into legend. Folklore said they had lived underground for 100 years. Scholars in the 1950s sought evidence, finding only scattered photographs, contradictory reports, and soil rich with lime. Their story became archive without resolution. Thus, Beat 5 closes. Exposure arrived by accident through census, through camera, through diaspora outrage, but collapse came not by confession. Collapse came because records contradicted each other until trust dissolved. The O'Malleys remained, revealed yet unexplained, erased yet persisting. Do not close the file. After exposure and collapse, the O'Malleys did not vanish. They endured in residue. Their names linger in registers, their faces in photographs, their absence in burials. The file refuses conclusion. By the 1940s, researchers began to collect the fragments. A local historian in Mayo compiled diaries, clippings, letters, and inspection notes. He wrote, "The family beneath turf persists in memory, though the records deny them." His pamphlet, privately printed, circulated only in the county. Yet it preserved what official reports had erased. In the 1950s, archaeologists surveying bogland near their former home found soil rich in lime, timbers hardened, and scraps of cloth pressed into clay. No intact remains, but enough residue to confirm long habitation underground. Their report concluded, the dwelling was engineered for permanence, not temporary shelter. Architecture testified again when voices were gone. Academics reframed the case. A thesis at University College Dublin in the 1960s argued the O'Malleys exemplified genetic isolation. The student traced parish registers, noting baptisms without burials, identical faces in photographs, repeated tradesmen's measurements. Her argument, what folklore called curse, was isolation in blood. Science provided vocabulary where medicine had faltered. Folklore, however, preserved its own version. In oral histories collected in the 1970s, elders spoke of the family who never grew older, the troglodytes of Mayo, the ones who would not die. Children dared one another to walk past the mound, though the house had long collapsed. Myth kept them alive long after law pronounced them gone. The diaspora, too, remembered. In Boston and New York, Irish societies told stories of kin who lived beneath bog. Some claimed descent, others swore denial. The tale became metaphor for poverty endured, for neglect by distant rulers. Memory transformed anomaly into symbol. The refrain evolves again. Earlier, erased, yet persisting. Now, remembered, not closed. Every diary, every clipping, every photograph refuses finality. The O'Malleys persist not as people, but as contradiction preserved in archive. This is the first half of Aftermath. How fragments survived erasure, how science reframed myth, how folklore and diaspora carried memory forward. Do not close the file. By the late 20th century, the O'Malleys had become more ghost than genealogy. Archivists cataloging poor law papers in the 1980s paused over the repeated phrases, as before, premises in order, matter concluded. They noted how uniform denials themselves became evidence. Bureaucratic silence, preserved in ink, now stood as indictment. Folklorists collected testimonies from valley elders. One woman recalled her grandmother pointing to the mound and saying, "They are still down there. They never left." Another spoke of seeing smoke rising from turf well into the 1930s. Memory and myth interwove, until fact could no longer be separated from tale. Academics reframed again. Geneticists in the 1990s cited the case as example of isolation magnified by poverty. They argued that what priests called miracle and neighbors called curse was biology compressed by geography and neglect. Their language gave name to what had unsettled doctors a century earlier. Yet photographs carried weight beyond science. Images of identical faces across decades circulated in exhibitions of hidden Ireland. Viewers stared at pale eyes, narrow jaws, the sameness of children across generations. No caption resolved the unease. Pictures spoke louder than reports. Writers and artists adopted the story. Novels hinted at families in bogs. Plays evoked houses without windows. Poems imagined lives beneath turf. The O'Malleys became metaphor for endurance and for neglect. Art preserved what archives obscured. The refrain hardens to its final form. Remembered, not closed. They cannot be dismissed as myth alone, nor confirmed as history alone. They remain lodged between rumor and record, a file that refuses closure. And so the story ends not with explanation, but with persistence. The O'Malleys lived underground. Registers denied, photographs confirmed, neighbors whispered, officials erased, academics reframed, folklore repeated. Fragments survive. Contradiction endures. Tell us again, before the file rests, where you are listening from. What time marks your watch? To know who else bears witness steadies the silence. Do not close the file.